So today we're going to be doing Unit 7, solving quadratic equations, factoring trinomial quadratics. So to refresh your memory, let's talk about what standard form of a quadratic looks like. So if you remember, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? That's what the standard form looks like. So using what we call X method, we're going to talk about steps to factor the trinomial. So our step 1 is to check and make sure the quadratic is in standard form. Look for the GCF. If there is one, factor it out. If not, move to step 3. Identify A, B, and C. Multiply A and C. And put that number on the top of the X. B goes at the bottom of the X. Look for two numbers that when multiplied give you the top number, but add together give you the bottom number, and write them on the two sides. And then divide each side number by A, not AX, but just A, and reduce the fractions if possible. So you're not really dividing the side numbers by AX, you're just dividing them by A, okay? So the first thing you want to do is look at the quadratic you have and see if it's in standard form or not. So is this quadratic in standard form? Yes, it is. So you're going to check the box off. It's in standard form. You can check off the box. You always want to make sure that's the case before you move on. Now, in this particular one, is there anything we can factor out of this, a GCF? 1, yeah. If there's no GCF, really we just write 1. And then inside you just rewrite the expression, okay? So you just rewrite the expression. We factored out the 1, and that's all we have so far. Now, once you have this in this parentheses here, you're going to identify A, B, and C. A is going to be the coefficient of x squared. And what is the coefficient of x squared? What's the number in front of the x squared? 1. What's the number in front of the negative 7? Always take the sign with you. And what's the number at the end here? 12. So that's A, B, and C. Okay? So, following the rule, the top of your x is the product, so multiply together A and C. So what's 1 times 12? 12. Good, so that's what goes up here. Down here is your B value, which is negative 7. So that's what goes in the box so far. Now moving on, we are looking for factors of factors of 12 that add up to negative 7. So what are two numbers that multiply to give you 12?
7 and 2.
You're close, 6 and 2, right? So if we think of factors of 12, we have 1 times 12. Those will give me 12.
I remember. Then we made like 12 divided by 3. Then we just be like 4 over 12.
Yeah, so 3 times 4, I think that's what you're thinking of, right? So 3 times 4.
I just remember.
But we also, the problem is this number is negative. So isn't it also true that negative 3 times negative 4 is still a positive 12?
Yeah.
So those two numbers will multiply to give me a positive 12, but will still add up to a negative 7, right? Because a negative plus a negative is a negative. So the two numbers that you're going to put here are negative 3 and negative 4. Now you're not done with the two sides yet because you have to divide them by A. And what is A? A is 1. So does it change the numbers when you divide them by 1? No, so they're just staying the same in this case, okay? So now we write our factored form. So the way you write this is you put two parentheses like this, you put an x and an x here, or whatever variable you're working with, and then these two numbers are what goes inside. So negative 3 and negative 4. And then on the sides, we're going to use the box method or area model to check our work. So here we're going to put x minus 3. You do remember?
Yeah, there'll be like
and x minus 4.
X squared by 2.
Good, yes.
Negative 3x is negative 3 times negative 4.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows if they didn't know, on the sides you put the two binomials that you're going to multiply together, and this is a method we use to check our work, okay? So x times x is x squared, x times negative 4 is negative 4x, x times negative 3 is negative 3x, and negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. So then once you have these, you should have two like terms right here. You see these two like terms? They have the same variable to the same power. We're going to write this out as a sentence. X squared, and then negative 3x plus negative 4x is negative 7x plus 12. And if you end up with what we started with, you've done it correctly. So did we end up with what we started when we checked our work? Yeah. Yes, so we've factored correctly, and you can check that off and assure that you've done the factoring properly. So, does anybody have any questions about number 1 before we move on to number 2? All right. So now we're going to try number 2. We're going to do the same procedure. Now, first thing we look at is this in standard form? Yeah. Yes, it is. So we're going to check off the box. Now, something I want you to notice right away. See how there's a negative sign in front of the x squared? Everybody see that? Anytime that's the case, I want you to factor out a negative 1. Okay? I want you to factor out a negative 1. And that's going to get rid of that negative sign in front of your x squared. So what's going to happen to your binomial now is every single sign of every term is going to change. So the x squared was originally negative, now it's positive. The 14x was positive, now it's negative. And the 32 was positive, it's now negative, negative 32. So factoring out a negative changes the sign of each term. Now once you've done that, you're going to identify A, B, and C using what's inside the parentheses here. So what's the A value now?
1.
Good. What's the B value? Good. And what's the C? Good. So you're going to use this to find those things, okay? Now once you've done that, we're going to fill in the x method. So the top of the x is A times C. What's negative 32 times 1? Good. So negative 32 goes up here on the top. On the bottom, you just put your B value, which is what? Good. Now our goal is to look for factors of negative 32, so two numbers that multiply to give me negative 32, but add up to negative 14. So what are some factors of 32? Two times what would give me 32? 2 times...
7. Wait, oh.
What do you think?
14.
You're close. Not 14, but lower than that.
4.
It's higher than that. See, a 16. So 2 times 16 would give me 32. But what's 2 plus 16? Well, one of these has to be negative, right? So which one of these has to be negative?
Probably 16.
Good. So if the 16 is negative, negative 16 plus 2 is negative 14, right? So the larger is negative when the number down here is negative. So the numbers here are going to be positive 2 and negative 16, because those two numbers multiply to give me negative 32, but add up to negative 14. Now the next step is to divide both of these by A, and what is A? 1. So in this case, does the A change anything? No. So it's just 2 and negative 16. So those are what goes inside your binomials. X plus 2, because it's positive, times x minus 16. Now from here, we're going to write these factors out here on this side. So x plus 2 and x minus 16. And we're going to multiply all the boxes to check our work. So what's x times x? Good. What's x times negative 16? Good. X times 2? 2x. And 2 times negative 16? Negative 32. So now these in the on the side should be what? Like what? Like terms. So we're going to write everything out. X squared. And then negative 16 plus 2 is negative 14, right? If you're in debt $16 and you get $2, now you're only in debt $14. Minus 32. So this is standard form, and this gets us back to what we have up here, doesn't it? So this means we've done it correctly. Now, one last thing that we're not quite done with yet, factored form. One thing that we didn't write in yet, the GCF. Whatever GCF you factored out here, if it's not 1, you have to put it on the outside of this. So it goes on the outside, the GCF. Everybody got that? Put the GCF on the outside. So is everybody ready to move on to example 3, not 4? Okay. So this method also works even if your A value isn't 1. So the first thing I want you to do is look at this and see if it's in standard form. What do you think? Yes, it is. And is there anything we can factor out of this? Are there any common factors of 3, 5, and 2? No. So the only GCF here is 1. If there's not a GCF, it's always 1. And then you're just rewriting the equation inside the parentheses. Now we just identify A, B, and C. So what would be my A value here?
3.
Good. What's my B value?
5.
And my C?
-2.
Good. Now up here on the top, my tablet's going a little slow today. Of course. It was lagging a little bit last period too. Oops. Yeah, it's just being a little slow today. It's a little laggy. So what's A times C? What's 3 times -2?
6.
Good, that's what goes up here. B goes down here. So we're looking for factors of -6 that add up to 5. So let's think of factors of -6 that add up to a positive 5. What two numbers can you multiply together to give you -6?
3 and 2.
Good. So -3 times a positive 2, and then -2 times a positive 3, those both give me -6. So what other products can we find? Anything times what? Itself times what? 1. So -1 times 6 and -6 times 1. So does everybody understand why one of these of the products have to be negative in this case? Go ahead. Anybody know? Yeah, so anytime this is negative, the product of a negative and a positive is the only way to get a negative, okay? Because the product of 2 negatives is a positive, and the product of 2 positives is a positive. So the only way to get a negative is to have a negative times a positive. So which one of these pairs adds up to a positive 5? Remember, we're adding them. So if you have $6 and I take away one of your dollars, how much do you have? Good. So -1 and positive 6 are going to be our two factors. Okay? So -1 is what you write here, and positive 6. Now the next step is to divide both of these by A. So in some cases, when you divide it by A, it's not going to do anything. -1/3, it's just going to stay a fraction. Okay? But can this simplify over here?
Yeah.
What does it become? 2.
No, 2.
Okay. So the way we write the factored form is going to be x and then this, whatever this is, -1/3. And then over here, this is going to be x plus 2. Now, we're not quite done yet because a lot of times, this isn't wrong, but a lot of times you're going to see this written without a fraction. So I'm going to show you how to counteract the fraction. What you do is, you take the denominator of the fraction and it goes in front of your x. Because I just want to make sure that you know how it can be written multiple ways. So they bring the denominator in front of the x. Okay? Now to check our work, we're going to multiply these two binomials together. So I'm going to write these binomials on the side of my boxes and I'm going to multiply them. So what is 3x times x?
3x squared.
Good job. What is 3x times 2?
6x.
Good. What's -1 times x?
-1x.
Good job. And -1 times 2?
It's -2.
Good job. So these two are what?
Right.
Like terms. So we're going to write it in standard form. So we always write the 3x squared first, or the x squared term first. What's 6x minus 1x?
5.
5x minus 2. Do we end up with what we started with? Yes, so we know that this is the proper factored form. So do we have any questions so far? All right.